Hi guys, we're gonna watch scary video, scary TikTok. Oh, sebelah itu yun, itu yun itu sebelah gym itu yun. Itu belakang itu dari pikiran kia. Tergilir siya papisan to na po. Di lo onita to yun. Pikiran siya to yun. Tergilir. What was that? What's this?
Illegal places you can't go, but people went anyways. Part 1, North Sentinel Island. On November 17th, John Cho illegally visited this island to preach Christianity to the tribes. This is the last photo taken of John while he was alive. As soon as John entered the island, he was killed with arrows by the tribe members, many alive.
So I had something happen to me that literally hasn't happened before. Excuse me, Charles, just thinking about it. I noticed that the horses were a bit spooky coming in, and so anyways, I noticed the horses were a bit spooky coming in. So I just thought, oh, it's, the weather coming in, whatever. But then I was standing in the barn aisle, and I noticed one of the horses was really starting to freak out. So I started to get a really weird feeling, and I swear to God, I heard somebody whisper, Whitney, right in my motherfucking ear. That's my name.
Hey, Mimi's trying to bite my finger.
Ever since I started recording this, I've been hearing some weird shit around me. So
I have a YouTube channel.
as soon as I end this, I'm out of here. Because it's all I can handle for tonight. I can't handle no more.
A bunch of videos like yesterday.
Yeah, I'm making a video
Hey,
right now
collector check.
on my phone.
Show the
Scary
most
video.
expensive item in your collection. The least expensive item in your collection.
So
The item
quiet,
everyone
man.
wants to
Quiet.
steal when they see your collection. The item that's least likely to be had by any other collector. Your first item in your collection. The newest item in your collection. The
Anyways,
strangest item in your collection.
I forgot the movie.
And your favorite
I
item in
forget
your
the movie
collection.
again. TikTok. What's
My name is Gabby, and this story is my true experience. When I was 11 years old, my family and I moved to a big house in a tiny town. Our new house was located at the highest point, which was at the end of the town. When we bought the house, the owner explained to us that his wife had just passed away due to cancer, and that the house was very precious to her, so she never wanted to sell it. Still, the owner said the house was too big and lonely for him, since all their kids were grown up and already moved to other cities. However, during the final part of the deal, he suddenly changed his mind and didn't want to sell the house. But it was too late.
Huh.
The owner stormed out of the office saying that it was
so
his
creepy.
house and that we were going to regret it. Anyway, this was during the time my dad was sent overseas because he was in the military. So
Okay.
my mom, my older brother, and I had to live by ourselves for 6 months.
Okay.
During that time, we had really weird experiences. So my mom, my older brother, and I had to live by ourselves for 6 months. During that
Look at that dog over there. Look over there, the dog with carrying a hat with a sunglasses. Look at it. Look at here, man. Look at here.
time, we had really weird experiences. Sometimes we would wake up to the sound of a goat in our backyard. It would last the whole night. The next morning, we talked to the neighbors and asked if one of them had goats, but none of them did. So at first, we just decided to ignore the
Please follow up to my
issue
video.
and leave it alone. Now, just for your information, our house design was kind of odd. Downstairs, we had my room, my brother's room, my soon-to-be-born sister's room, and a weird wide walkway that led to the backyard. And upstairs, we had a kitchen, living room, and my parents' room. The downstairs was underground, and the upstairs was technically the first floor. Anyway, one night, I decided to sleep with my mom, so I went upstairs with my brother. Later that night, we heard a sharp scream coming from downstairs. It sounded like it was my dad's voice screaming for help. He was calling all of our names. My mom rushed out of the room and was ready to run downstairs. All of a sudden, she stopped at the top of the staircase and looked at us with a weird expression on her face. But your dad is still in Colombia. How could he... And the next thing I saw was my mom abruptly falling down the stairs. That moment was so horrible. It was like someone pushed her backwards before she was able to resist. My brother called the police and I ran down the stairs to check my mom and see if she was okay. We struggled to bring her up the stairs, but we managed to make it to her room.
Okay. So, follow-up na Not sponsor. Not sponsor. How do I get around to them?
I was crying the entire night, and we were so afraid. Due to falling down the stairs, Mom was injured, and unfortunately, we lost our new family member. The most chilling part was that they found large handprints on my mom's back, as if she was pushed by someone. This led to an investigation, but they had to leave the case open because no one was found in our house, other than the three of us. We all suffered and went through a hard time that year, especially my mom. She slid into depression. When she recovered, we moved the following year. However, more things happened throughout the year, but not as bad as the previous one. Just footsteps, broken plates, or similar stuff to that. We put that house on the market when we left, but no one has contacted
Our
us.
baby kitten.
One thing is for certain. I hope that we never have to go back to that creepy house again. I really, really don't want to go back.
Another one.
Bilis talaga ng panahon. Hindi ka na malit ngayon.
Ikaw pupunta dyan. Gusto mo siyang kalaban.
Like and comment.
Pictures taken right before death. First, we have this 18-year-old girl who wanted to get the most extreme selfie, so she climbed up a bridge which was about 30 feet high. And then she fell off, but it wasn't the fall that killed her. It was on her way down, she grabbed some electrical wires and they electrocuted her. This picture was actually taken by a guy who was just testing out the new camera that he got, and it shows this 14-year-old boy literally flying out of a plane. It turns out he was hidden in the plane wheels, and during takeoff, he somehow fell out, and it was caught on camera. This looks like your typical best friend picture before a night out, right?
Yeah.
Except the night would end in disaster, with one of them using the belt she was wearing to strangle the other. And she then blamed it on being intoxicated and said she couldn't remember anything of the night anyways.
First games you should never play, part 7. The elevator game. The point of this game is to go to a parallel universe. To play, you need to go to a building that has at least 10 floors. And you need to be the only one in the elevator at all times. If somebody interrupts the game, start over. Then go to the floors 4, 2, 6, 2, 10, and 5. In this exact same order. Once you're in the 5th floor, a woman
I'm not gonna play the kitten.
should enter the elevator. But don't speak to her and don't look at her, because she's not a human. And she will take you and keep you with her forever if you interact with her. Then press the 1st floor and the elevator will go up or down, but it will take you to the 10th floor. At this point, leave the elevator immediately. The one will ask you where are you going, but do not respond. If you see a red cross outside one of the windows, then you reach the other world. You're alone there, your phone doesn't work, and it's dark outside. Go back to the steps all over again. But when you reach the first...
Right.
a haunted song. This song has been responsible for countless suicides. He jumped
An estate sale in Spain. When the man learned that the item was a family heirloom, he offered to return it to the family, but they insisted that he keep it. The box was purchased by the family's grandmother after the Holocaust had ended, but it sat unopened inside of her sewing room because
I'm
the
still
grandmother was
quiet.
convinced
Don't know
a
what to
Dybbuk
do.
was inside
Don't know
of
what
it.
to say.
Dybbuk is a demon that has the ability to possess different items. When the American man brought the box home, he opened it up, and this is what was inside. Inside the box, there were 2 locks of hair, a single candle holder, 2 pennies from the 1920s, and a small statue with the Hebrew word peace inscribed. Like for part 2.
Not one.
He ran at the police and swung his axe at them, so they shot him and killed him. When they took off his mask, nobody could recognize him and nobody knew who he was. A couple days later, some fishermen heard screaming coming from an old abandoned shed with a giant padlock on it, so they called the police immediately. When the police arrived, they broke the padlock and found 20 crying children locked inside cages, all along with another bloody Easter bunny costume. So they let the children free and burned the whole shed down. That bunny was never seen ever again.
Located in a cemetery in Vermont, there is a grave with a window to peek inside. This grave belonged to a man named Timothy Clark Smith.
Okay.
Timothy had a fear of being buried alive. This may seem like an irrational fear, but it was actually more common than people realize. Timothy patented a design for his own gravesite. Not only did he include a window on his tombstone, he also built a contraption that included a bell. In the case that Timothy woke up underneath the ground, he could pull a string and ring the bell to signal for help. Timothy passed away on Halloween in 1893, and he never needed to use the bell. The window to his grave is still there, although the visibility to see inside of it is very low after the years. But I can't imagine being a gravekeeper, hearing a bell ringing in the middle of the night, knowing that you're the only one there.
If you're ever walking and hear a sound behind you, look up, for it might be the Gashadokuru. The Gashadokuru are skeleton giants who walk around in the middle of the night. If they see a human, they will quietly walk up behind them, bite off their head, and drink their spraying blood. Soldiers that die on the field and people that die of starvation usually do not have their final rites read. In Japanese culture, that means that their soul cannot pass on and they're reborn as a hungry ghost. When the bones of hundreds of those souls gather together, they become the skeleton monster known as Gashadokuru. If you're a fan of monsters, scary stories, and lore, please support this channel. Thank you guys.
If you're a girl, stop what you're doing right now and watch this video.
Mm-hmm.
The second you get into your car, lock that shit, because they literally just try to get into her car. Kudos to her for driving away, because I literally would have backed up and ran them over. These men are creepy out here. Stay safe.
This is why you should never play hide and seek. A mom decided to play hide and seek with her 2 kids. The mom began counting, ready or not, here I come. She begins searching the downstairs kitchen because she knows that they hide there every single time. As she's walking to the kitchen, she starts saying, I wonder where they are. She looks under the table and sees they aren't there, which is kind of odd. She knew they were too scared to go into the basement alone, but she decided to check anyway. They weren't there either. She began to panic. The mom then says, Jordan, Casey, come out now. Mommy's not playing anymore. There was no answer. Panic really begins to set in. She decides to call 911 and reaches an operator. She tells the operator what's wrong, and the operator sends an officer to her house. Once the officer arrives, he says, don't worry, we will find them. As she's sitting in the living room, she hears giggling and laughing and hears a closet door slam upstairs. She sprints upstairs and says, Jordan, Casey, you worried me sick. She opened the closet door and nobody was there. While all of this is going on, she hears the doorbell ring. She runs downstairs and finds the officer holding Jordan and Casey. The officer says, they were hiding in the shed out back. Then Jordan looks at mommy and says, why were you telling us to stay in the shed?
This little girl went missing, and 20 years later, the police make a horrifying discovery. In 1998, a 6-year-old girl named Sophie went to school like usual, but that day she just never came home. Years went by, and nobody knew what happened to the little girl. So her friends and family finally came to the realization that she was gone.
Well, 20 years later, an anonymous letter was given to the police saying that the missing girl's family had a secret. Intrigued by the letter, the police rushed to the family's house. They showed them the letter and then asked to search their property. The family agreed, so they searched the house, but they didn't find anything. But on their way out, they noticed something very peculiar. At the end of some stairs was a door that was padlocked shut, and when the family refused to open it, they busted it down and made a horrifying discovery.
This is why you should never let anyone kiss your babies. Savina and her mother was at a family member's house when a family member kissed Savina. A while later, she started developing bumps all over her face and bleeding all over her t-shirt. It turns out that family member had herpes. Before I continue, Trump says TikTok has 45 more days. Just in case I find an app just like TikTok, link is in my bio if you want to download it.
If you go anywhere near
Savina got treated for it and eventually started healing, but do not let people kiss your babies.
If you go to this island, you will die. This is North Sentinel Island. If you go anywhere near this island, you will die. The island is in the middle of nowhere, and you can only access it by boat. The people on this island are called the North Sentinelese, and they are all a part of one tribe. The Indian government even said it is illegal to go within 5 miles of this island because it's so deadly. If you get too close to this island, the people will shoot you with bow and arrows, beat you to death, and then consume your body. This is missionary John Allen Chow. He tried spreading the gospel to the North Sentinelese people, but they ended up killing him on the spot and eating his body.
This is why you should never stay awake past 3 a.m. A woman in her early 20s was away from home on a business trip. The night before she was supposed to board her plane, she had trouble sleeping and had this intense fear that someone was staring at her in her room. She was up until 3, tossing and turning until she started to hear whispers. It was a deep voice repeating the words, "I'm coming to get you. I'm coming to get you." But she ignored it and eventually fell asleep. After her plane landed, she was exhausted but drove home anyway. About 30 minutes into her drive, she started hearing the same whispers from the previous night, but she thought it was because she was sleep deprived, so she kept driving. She was almost home when she began to feel sick. Her eyes were watering, her nose was running, and she let out a large sneeze. "Bless you," said the same deep, eerie voice. She quickly pulled into her driveway, hugged her husband, and sat down to tell him what was going on. When this happened,
This story has the best ending ever. In 2003, a 9-year-old was home alone playing video games when he thinks he hears his cat meowing on the back patio, so he goes downstairs to let him in. He sees a deranged-looking man standing on his back patio howling at the sky, who then quickly looks at the boy. He grabs a fistful of cigarette butts from the ashtray, stuffs them in his mouth before he starts howling at the sky some more. After the police take the man away, they come back to talk to the boy and his family. Turns out the man had severe autism and lived in that boy's house up until his mother passed away, at which time he was transitioned to a mental institution. He broke out of that mental institution to go looking for his mom, which is how he came back to the boy's house. 15 years later, that same boy is sitting on his same back patio when he starts to hear that same meowing sound, and he looks up and it's the same autistic man walking towards his house. Knowing the man's story, he invites him into his house. The man's face lights up, he runs inside and starts crying. He was finally home. The men become friends, and every week Tom goes home to visit.
No sponsor, no sponsor.
The men become friends, and every week Tom goes home to visit. Here's why you should never go on the world's tallest water slide. In 2014, in Kansas City, the world's tallest water slide, the Verricht, was opened at Schlitterbahn Water Park. The Verricht has a 168-foot drop, which then shoots you up a rise on the slide and then descends another 50 feet into a pool. The combined speed of the 17-story drop and the water jets caused the ride to have a 400-pound weight requirement to keep it from going airborne. In 2016, 10-year-old Caleb Schwab was planning to ride the Verricht with his 12-year-old brother Nathan. Due to the weight requirements, the two were separated, and Nathan went first while his brother Caleb was seated with 2 older women. But witnesses reported that their weight did not meet the requirements. At some point after the 168-foot drop, Caleb was thrown from the ride and hit one of the metal rings supporting it at nearly 70 miles an hour. Reports say that the 10-year-old had a fatal neck injury and was decapitated, while his 12-year-old brother witnessed the incident and screamed hysterically. Days later, the park announced that the ride was closed and was scheduled for demolition. Normal-looking photos that have a disturbing backstory, Part 18. The girl in this photo was arrested for torturing and killing animals. She filmed herself doing it and even posted it online. She hanged her dogs by their collars, nailed them to walls, and even shot them with an airsoft gun.
She would then cut them open and rip out their internal organs. This sweet-looking little girl is Jeannie, also known as the Wild Child, who spent the first 13 years of her life chained to a chair, and this photo was taken moments after she'd just been rescued. This normal-looking scenic painting features the ocean with the night sky. However, it was painted by Adolf Hitler, whose dream in life was to become an artist. However, he failed the entrance exam to art school and ultimately gave up. These pieces of yarn in a first-grade classroom are the trajectories of the bullets fired by the Sandy Hook shooter in 2012, who killed 20 children and 6 adults. The reason that the angles are pointing downward is quite disturbing when you think about it.
This is the scary true story about why you should never, ever talk to a girl that has a boyfriend. One day, a guy was sitting in class when a girl named Tracy DM'd him. Her account was on private, but based on her profile picture, the guy thought she was really, really attractive. So the guy requested to follow her and shot her a DM and said, "Hey, you should accept my request." The girl replied, "You're very attractive, but I cannot accept your request because I don't want my boyfriend finding out." All girls are the same, man. The guy thought it was very flattering of her to compliment him while she had a boyfriend, even though it was wrong. So while a lot of the small talk is going on, he finally ends up asking her if she wants to hang out at the beach at 11 a.m. She replies and says, "Yes, but I'm nervous." He says, "Don't be, we're just gonna hang out," and he pulls into this parking lot. Keep in mind, that's very important. He DMs her 5 minutes later and says, "Hey, I just got here, where are you at?" She replies and says, "Great, I left something in the sand for you." So him kind of questioning it, he finds in the sand there's a Polaroid picture of his car that he just parked. I'm running out of time, but I'm posting part 2 right now, so go check it out.
This old lady killed so many people. Baba Anushka, she loved chemistry. And when her husband died, she was like, "I'm going to make the house into a laboratory and sell potions." So a bunch of girls came to her and they were like, "We don't want our husbands to go to war." And she was like, "I can make them really, really sick so they don't have to." And they were like, yeah, do that. So she started getting really, really popular. But then all the girls were like, "We actually don't like our husbands. Can you do a little more?" And Baba Anushka was like, "Yeah, I can kill them." So then all the girls were like, "Oh, we like this." So Baba Anushka made these deadly potions, gave them to the girls. The girls gave them to their abusive husbands, and they were dead in like 8 days. And Baba Anushka would do this thing where she'd ask the girls, "How heavy is the problem?" Which was code for, "How heavy is your husband? Because I gotta make sure I put enough in it, mama." She was so successful that she hired a sales agent to go into town and like sniff out people with marital problems. But this one girl fucked it all up. After she killed her shitty husband, she used another potion to kill her new husband's rich uncle. And the police were like, "Can you explain this?" And she was like, "It was Baba Anushka." Baba Anushka was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" But she ended up getting out of jail and then living to 100.
See, I don't know.